Now, if you're an optimist, you'd point to the budget in the black and getting better, and also that inflation is falling. The economic levers appear to be working, but is it as simple as that? Joining me from Adelaide, Shadow Treasurer Angus Taylor. Angus, good to chat to you as always. Would you describe yourself as an optimist about our economy right now?
Well, I'm an optimist about our country. I'm not an optimist about the government. And just to pick up on some of the Treasurer's comments there, Ross, let's be clear, a drover's dog could have delivered a surplus at the moment. We were in surplus from November 2021 when New South Wales and Victoria opened up at the end of the pandemic through to the May election. The job of the government should be to a lot more than just delivering that. Now, the truth of the matter is this government has added $185 billion of spending since it came into government. That's over $7,000 for every man, woman and child. That is inflationary. There's no question about it. And of course, Chalmers talking about spending growth. He starts from a pandemic year. He doesn't start after the pandemic, of course. So, he's really fudging the numbers there. $185 billion is the real number. $7,000, over $7,000 for every man, woman, child in this country. And that's an expansionary fiscal policy. That means, of course, it's putting extra pressure on inflation. And on top of that, instead of pulling every lever that the government can to put downward pressure on inflation, whether it's energy policy, industrial relations policy, productivity policies, this government is actually relying on the Reserve Bank to do the work. And that's why we've seen unexpected increases in interest rates, including the one post-election, having highlighted the expectation, post-budget, having highlighted the expectation in the budget that there wouldn't be further increases in interest rates.
OK, but then inflation, according to the ABS today, is coming down. So therefore, even though the budget might be expansionary, as you say, something's working. The interest rates are working. It would appear that the headline rate of inflation, at least, is falling right now. Do you buy that?
Well, let's look at the underlying rate, which has gone from 6.5 to 6.4. That's hardly a spectacular reduction. And of course, these are monthly figures. The quarterly number's at 7%. We'll see where the next quarterly number comes out, which is the more reliable, longer-term number. These monthly numbers are new. This is a new data series. But the underlying has barely moved. And what we're seeing is a stubbornly persistent inflation in the economy. And you only have to get out onto the street, as I have been here in South Australia, getting around South Australia, talking to businesses, talking to households, and you see how stubbornly persistent it is, whether it's food prices, energy prices, furniture prices, housing costs, all of those costs are rising sharply. People are feeling it. It's extremely painful, and sadly, the government is relying too much on the Reserve Bank to do the work to bring down inflationary pressures. And of course, when the Reserve Bank does the work, it's focusing the pain on that group of Australians, those hardworking Australians who are trying to get ahead, who've got a mortgage, who have taken out a loan to grow their businesses. They're the ones who are paying the very high price for these inflationary pressures.
And for the budget, you do get the sense this is as good as it gets, mainly because if you look forward, the unemployment rate does rise. There could be another 200,000 people out of work if the unemployment rate rises as expected. That being the case, there's not as much tax revenue coming in. And of course, there'll be welfare that the government will have to pay. So this really does indicate that the surplus is probably short-lived.
Well, I think it's even worse than that because we know that the economy is shuddering to a halt, Ross. It's going at 0.2% is the latest number over the last quarter. So that's barely above zero. Of course, GDP per capita in the last quarter went backwards. And so there's no question at all. The economy is slowing very, very quickly. Commodity prices have come from extraordinary highs, which have been a huge boost to the budget and a result of many, many years of strengthening our commodity sectors, making sure sectors like gas and the coal sector continue to prosper and succeed. We're seeing much less of an interest in that from this government. So I do think, as the budget expects, by the way, that the budget will go off a cliff over the next couple of years. Of course, what we need right now is a government that's pulling every single lever at its disposal to take pressure off inflation. Industrial relations, look, they're going in exactly the wrong direction on this. And employers are saying that. You've got to link real wage price increases with productivity. Let's be clear, productivity in the last year, labour productivity in the last year has fallen by almost 5 percentage points. We've never seen anything like this. Over our time in government, it increased at 11 percentage points, and that was over 1% a year. And suddenly we've seen this massive reversal. And meanwhile, we've got a government bringing in industrial relations policies that are actually going to make the situation worse. Of course, everyone wants to see higher real wages. The problem is, if you've got inflation outpacing wage increases, then people are going backwards, and that's exactly the situation we've got right now.
And you've also got the thing that puts pressure on employers to let workers go in the future, especially if there's a lack of productivity. So really, when it comes down to the future budgets that are delivered by this government, after taking credit for the surpluses now, you'd have to imagine they should also own any deficits that might come in the future budgets that they deliver.
Well, also owning the dreadful state of the economy as you look forward over the next year or so. I mean, it's all well and good to crow that people should feel better off. They don't, and there's no reason why they should when GDP per person is now going backwards, Ross. This is the reality of the situation that we've got. Inflation is good for government budgets. It's bad for households and bad for businesses, and it's bad for the economy. And we've got a Prime Minister right now who's more interested in talking about the voice than he is talking about cost of living pressures and inflation.
Many thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Ross.